to the 20-minute cooking school. I am Claire Tansey. This is Claire Tansey's Kitchen. This is the school in which I share all the tips and tricks that make cooking fun. So how are ya? It is the holiday countdown. We have the tree is up. We have our holiday bunting up. We have even hung the stockings with care. So we are in full holiday mode here at my house and in Claire Tansey's kitchen. I made like a double batch of granola this week, put it in the freezer for those Christmas morning, holiday morning when people are here. But I thought I would talk about baking today and address whatever questions you have about your holiday baking and share with you some of the tips and tricks that I use to just make baking a little bit more, I don't know, for lack of a better word, a little easier, just a little bit less insanely stressful. There was a time when I used to do all the like crazy rolled out cookies and the layered things and the royal icing and the decorating and the this and the that. And I don't know, maybe since I turned 40, I don't give a care anymore. Or maybe I just learned that there's just no point. But I don't do that anymore. My holiday baking now is so simple, so simple. And I'm always looking to get kind of the most baking bang for my buck. Most baking bang for like effort. So that means, guess what? I don't do rolled out cookies anymore. I don't use my cookie cutters, not at the holidays. I use them maybe for Valentine's Day or for birthdays and stuff. Nothing against them. I just find it takes too much time. I ain't got time for nothing. I love cooking, as you know, but it's the holidays. I want to stock up on great things that are easy and fast and delicious. So, while sharing tips and tricks and while answering your questions, so hit me up with your questions. I have a few already on reserve from people who could not watch us live. While I'm doing that, I'm also going to make Chewy coconut lime blondies. Which kind of capture all the things that I love the most about easy holiday baking. So, hi, welcome into my kitchen. Ask me your baking questions, ask me your holiday questions and stuff, and I will do my best to answer everything as much as I can. So, tip number one when it comes to holiday baking is embrace the square. Embrace the square. 8x8 metal pan. I now have 5 or 6 of these. This is a pan in which you make anything from day squares, blondies, brownies. You can make shortbread cookies in here. This is a fabulous way to make at least 16 and sometimes 36 little sweets. Hello Dollies, all those sorts of fantastic squares. Think of what your grandma made. Think of what they serve in the basement of the church when you go to a funeral. No? Nobody? Funeral squares? It's the only reason to go to a funeral? Okay, never mind. So squares, you plop everything into here, you bake it, you cool it, you cut it into 16 or 32 or however many pieces you want to cut it into. So instead of having to roll stuff out, you get a ton out of one easy pan. So that's what I'm going to do today. Now this is fairly new, but another great tip for making your baking kind of easier, neater, and getting more out of it is you're always going to line your pan with parchment, and I'll tell you why. Because after you, hang on, let's line the pan with parchment first, shall we? And then I'll tell you why. But when it comes to parchment, so yes, this is parchment paper. You can also use these things, which I've talked about, but these have to be cut to be exactly the right size as your pan. And you can also use baking spray, more about this in a minute, but for this particular one and for most squares, I'm going to recommend lining your pan with parchment with 2 overhanging sides. Now, what does that mean? I have no idea. Let me twist you around here so you can see. Naomi, hi from the McLeans. Kids want to know, what is your favorite Christmas baked good? Probably Christmas cake. My Christmas cake that I made a couple weeks ago. I also love shortbread cookies that my mom makes. Then I got nothing against a ginger snap. So how about you guys? Patrick, Abby, Evie, Naomi, what is your favorite Christmas treat? Okay, so let's get back to our, good question by the way. Let's get back to some parchment. Okay, parchment. Key with parchment, and I have said this before, but I will say it until I am dead. Use scissors. The rippy thing, the rippy edge on the edge of the parchment box is essentially useless. So it will rip, but it will rip unevenly, and oftentimes your box will fall apart before you actually get the paper. So just do yourself a favor, get yourself a scissors, And I'm gonna line this pan. So this really does not have to be exact. You'll see why in a second. So I just put my pan on top there, and then I cut the parchment just inside of the line of the pan. So let me show you what that looks like. Oh, oven's ready. Oven's ready. Turn the oven on to 350. Okay. Parchment. So now what you can see here, what I'll do. So first of all, you see that it's not perfect against the bottom. Like there's a little bit of gapping at the top. If I can actually hold this properly. The idea here is once the bars are cooked and cooled, I'm actually going to use this as like a handle, and I'm going to lift the whole thing out. That way I can use the entire bar. Like I don't have to be worried about, you know, that after I cut it in the pan and then I go to scrape them out or lift them out, one's going to get lost. So this way you get perfect edges, and if for any reason like the edges get a little bit burnt or not good, you can just easily trim them off. So that is tip number one, is always when you're doing bars, line parchment with overhanging sides. That's why it doesn't have to be exactly even, because against up the sides, because that would take a lot of time. I'd have to get out like my ruler and maybe cut twice and measure once or whatever it is you're supposed to do. This is really just creating like a little paper basket with which I'm going to lift the bars out. It's also going to be non-stick. To make sure that it does stick in the pan, there's nothing worse than parchment moving all over the place. You can use a bit of butter or whatever you grease your pans with, but I just use this little just oil spray, and that way this is going to sit. And you see what I'm doing here? I kind of bend this over. This is just me being a little bit funny because I don't want the size of the parchment paper to flop into the batter. Okay, so there we go. We've already covered many tips. Many tips. Did you also know parchment, reusable and compostable? So don't feel bad that even if you use it once, you can always just pop it in the composter. Okay, so Mr. Pan is ready. Got my little handles there. Put him aside. Now I want to make a really, let's twist this up so you can see me a bit. I'm really going to make a really easy recipe. So here are some things that annoy me when I'm baking that take time. One, chopping chocolate. Gotta say, love chocolate, love chocolate. But if you've ever had to chop chocolate for a recipe, it's so annoying. First of all, it's hard. Second of all, it gets everywhere. Third of all, you eat most of it. And oh, there's Michael Summers coming in. Come in! That's how you know it's live, because my family's just about to come in. Hi, guys. Hi. We're on. Come and say hi to everybody. We're on TV. Come and say hi. Oh.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. You know who's watching?
Who?
Patrick and Abby and Evie.
Ooh.
Ooh. What's your favorite thing about Christmas?
Cake.
Cake? Christmas cake? Mama too. Okay. Love you. Go on now. Mama's working. Have a, yeah. All right.
Swimming.
He's going swimming. Your goggles are here on the table. Sorry, gotta be a parent too at the same time. They're just in your swim bag. In their swim bag. Swim bag. Michael Summers.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Okay, so chopping chocolate, number one thing that's annoying about baking. Number two, I know it's hard to, you can't see all the people. People, wave. Oh, Naomi says hi. So does Chantel, hi. The other thing I find annoying about baking is, well, as I already mentioned, rolling out cookies with cookie cutters. I also find butter generally annoying when I'm baking. Just because when the mood strikes me to bake, inevitably my butter is not at the right temperature. So it's either in the freezer and you need it at room temperature, or whatever. That's all fine. But this is such an easy recipe because it uses canola oil, which is really both wonderful. Doesn't taste really like anything in particular, so the flavors of the coconut and the lime are really going to come out. Always at room temperature and easy to stir. Means you don't need the mixer. Also, canola oil. Cheap, Canadian, delicious, perfect. Baked with canola oil. I love it. As you know, you probably know that I do a lot of work with actually canola oil and the canola growers of Manitoba. I was there in Calgary last week. I know that Calgary's not in Manitoba. That's a different subject. But this is a recipe that I developed for them. Well, we're sharing it. Oh dear. This orange is rotten. That's okay. So we've got our limes. They're ready to go. And I've got my single bowl. That's also fine. Now I'm just going to start making these babies. So we're going to start with an egg. Don't forget, you got to hit me up with your baking questions, your baking worries and concerns. What is troubling you this Christmas time? What are you baking? And, oh, geez, Louise. Are you all right, buddy?
Yes.
It's okay. Thomas fell down the stairs. He's okay. He's all right. Okay, so we've got an egg, and then I need how much brown sugar? So, brown sugar, I get a lot of questions about this. Is it dark brown sugar? Is it light brown sugar? Is it golden brown sugar? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Brown sugar is made by mixing white sugar with molasses, and the darker brown it is, the more molasses it has in it. That'll just sort of affect the moisture and the flavor, but honestly, when it comes to my recipes, it doesn't really matter. How much? 1 cup of brown sugar. I love using brown sugar because what it does is it keeps things really moist and tender. Guys, it's 4:11. We got to get to it. We only have another 9 minutes. The little Thomas interruption cut into our time. So, brown sugar. This is the golden yellow sugar. Honestly, I just sort of often grab whatever I get to first. Patrick would like to know, what is your favorite cookie to make? I think I like chocolate chip cookies best, Patrick. What about you, Thomas?
I like
Who's gonna?
mint.
Minty cookies? He's a funny bird. Funny bird. Brown sugar is always measured packed. So even if you come across a recipe that doesn't say like 1 cup of packed brown sugar, it's a standard in recipe writing. Brown sugar is always measured packed. So you pack that in. So I got my brown sugar, I got my egg. What else are we going to do? Vanilla. So, vanilla. Some people don't like vanilla. I know, you think it's like your standard flavor, but you know, when I was testing the recipes for Uncomplicated in my book, I had vanilla in a couple of things, and a couple of my testers said, why is there vanilla in this? There's cinnamon in it instead, or there's this and that. So like, for me, vanilla is a flavor that brings out other flavors, but for some people, it's just annoying and imposing, and you know what you can do? You can just skip it. That is totally fine. That said, when you're working with brown sugar, vanilla is a nice mix. So, okay, this already looks like nothing, right? So it's just brown sugar and egg, and a bit of vanilla, and my brown sugar is a little bit lumpy, so I'm going in with the whisk. Ugh. Oh, there we go. I had actually another question earlier this week from a friend who wanted to know what dark molasses was. Dark molasses, which is a term I'd never heard before, but the thing with molasses, if you're using molasses in any of your baked goods, you always want to use the fancy molasses. You don't want to use like blackstrap molasses or anything like that. You want to use fancy molasses because the blackstrap molasses or the kind of non-cooking, non-fancy molasses can be too bitter, which I found out one time when I took a fancy gingerbread cake to a party and I had used the wrong molasses. It was really bitter. Hello, Allison. What are your questions? Hit me up with your baking questions, worries, and woes. I am popping in about 1/4 cup of canola oil. See, it's not even really that much. This is just so easy. And you see what I mean? Like, you know, when you're making cookies and you gotta get the white sugar out and the brown sugar, and you gotta get the baking soda and the baking powder, and you gotta get 2 eggs, and then you gotta separate them. So this is really what I love about baking. It's delicious and it's fast, and it's no fuss. Okay, these are coconut lime. So this is a 200-gram bag of sweetened coconut, which is about 2 cups. If you want to go to the bulk store and say, oh my gosh, do not use a whisk with the coconut because it'll do this and it'll be really annoying to wash. It is, Dara, all about easy baking. Oh, we have so much fun with our easy baking. Okay, so there is the coconut. So there's 2 cups of coconut. And then I need about 1/2 cup of flour. Just really enough to kind of hold these babies together. You know, here's a great tip for baking. if you can, switch to using a scale. You know, I've talked about this before. Using a scale for baking is so easy. You see, in this case, I need 1/2 cup of flour, so I don't have to get out my 1/2 cup measure and dirty that up and then, like, you know, spoon in my flour and then level it off. I just know that I need 75 grams of flour. Because 1 cup of flour is 150, so 1/2 cup is 75. I do love my scale. So pretty much all of my baking recipes will always have the weights on them. British recipes will always have weights on them because, of course, the Brits always use scales. Smitten Kitchen uses weights really consistently and really well. Anyway, anything European you'll find they're probably going to use weights. So I will always try to include both. And what I'm going to do for the rest of the week, on and off, is I will link to my favorite easy baking recipes, ones I developed, say, when I was at Chatelaine back in the day, or other links from around the web or from my own site that are just what I like to call the easy holiday baking recipes. Wasn't very eloquent. All right, what am I forgetting? Salt and baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of each. Now, I am going to post this recipe on my website. I will put it up tomorrow, probably, maybe tonight. We'll just see sort of how the day goes. Tom's gone swimming. I've pulled some bolognese sauce out of the freezer for dinner, so that's pretty easy. But I have a girl date tonight with one of my dear friends who I haven't seen in ages, so I just don't know how the evening's gonna turn out. Okay, another tip of baking, use table salt. So, oh cripes, we've only got 3 minutes. No problem, this is the 20-minute cooking school. This is gonna be easy. So table salt. As you can see, so here's my kosher salt, here's my table salt, here's my Maldon salt. I have 2 other types of salt in the pantry. Table salt for baking. Why? It's smaller. All these little individual salts are smaller, and so they spread out in the baking much more evenly. The other thing, and I had this conversation with somebody yesterday, every brand of kosher salt is different. This is important if you're using kosher salt. Hey, Daphne, nice to see you. Every brand of kosher salt is different. So remember when we did the no-knead bread last week before? I talked about kosher salt. My friend used a different brand of kosher salt and it ended up being too salty. I use Diamond Crystal. It's a particular grain. It's a particular sort of coarseness, but it's its own thing. And every kosher salt is different. Table salt is table salt is table salt. It can be sea salt. It can be from a mine. It can be like, this is just ordinary boxed Windsor salt, 99 cents a box. I use this for salting my pasta water. Remember that from pasta so many weeks ago. It's iodized, which we need for our thyroid. Why do we, anybody there know, remember why we need iodine? There's something inside us that needs iodine. So with baking, table salt, first of all, because it's very consistent. My 1/2 teaspoon is your 1/2 teaspoon is Ina Garten's 1/2 teaspoon. Hey, Ina, you watching? How you doing? No, I doubt it. And then also in baking because it spreads out very nicely. And of course, salt is very important in baking. You need to have salt to bring the flavors together. I feel like I say that every week, no matter what the subject is, whether it's baking or pasta or bread. So this is looking pretty rough. Right? It's actually looking not bad. And now all I have to do is add my lime zest. So lime zest, favorite tool, kitchen, one of my very, very favorite tools. If you know anybody who doesn't have one and who loves to cook, stick one in their stocking. Oh, this smells so good. Stick one in their stocking. You know what it smells like? It smells like being at an all-inclusive resort and sitting near the bar because they're making margaritas all day long. And so it smells like lime. It's a wonderful smell. Of course, lime and coconut go so well together. That's why I put the two together. I made these for the first time without the lime, and I thought, oh, it's good. It's really sweet. Like, it's sweetened coconut and brown sugar. Like, it's sweet, right? And so I thought, well, let's add a little bit of lemon. I thought, oh no, let's add lime. Lime and coconut, so good together. And first I added the zest of 2 limes, and I was like, let's jack it up. And yes, somebody asked me this about this recipe. What do you do with the lime? what about the juice? And I did, when I first tested the recipe, I made a little glaze with the lime juice. But you know what? It was really unnecessary and it added an extra step. So save your juice limes. You just pop them in a plastic bag and put them in the fridge. They will last for weeks. And then use your lime juice for salad dressing, for marinades, for margaritas, for martinis. Whatever else people use their lime juice for. So you can see I've got all that beautiful lime zest in there. And it is $4.20. Smoke them if you got them. Kidding. Or maybe not. I don't know who's watching. Who's watching? Hey, Cousin Jen, how are ya? So this is good. We're just gonna plop this in. It's gonna work. So this is really okay. This is egg, brown sugar, coconut, guacamole for your limes. Yes. Thank you, Shell. Eggs, brown sugar, coconut, canola oil, salt, baking powder, a bit of flour, and lime zest. Really easy. Remember our beautifully lined pan? This just gets plopped in here, and when I post the recipe, I'll take a picture of this when it comes out of the oven, and I will post the recipe, and you will see it turns out like kind of just crunchy at the edges and chewy on the inside, like insanely chewy, tender on the inside. It's really, really good. This is an old-fashioned recipe. It's based on a recipe from an old 1967 cookbook. All I have to do here is smush this into shape, pop it in the oven for about half an hour, and I'll show you the picture after I take it out. Guys, I never even put my hair up. That was really bad form in terms of kitchen etiquette. Thank you so much for joining me on the 20-minute cooking school. If you have questions about baking, feel free to email me, info@clairetansey.com. Leave me a message here, and I will see you next week for week 2 of the holiday countdown. Next week is edible gifts. We're going to be talking about edible gifts, things that you can make and then give away that people can eat, which are the best kind of gifts. Week after that, we're going to tackle mashed potatoes. Yes, your best ever mashed potatoes. I'm going to hook you up, and at some point we'll probably make a martini. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Cannot wait to see you next week. Have an awesome week, and I hope you're enjoying the countdown to the holidays. Bye for now.